That was loud.
Thank you.
Good morning. If everybody wasn't awake before, you are now. We're going to call to order this meeting of the Architectural Barriers Advisory Committee. Today is August 28th, 2018. The time is about 10:02, so we're pretty much right on time. So the first thing we need to do is to call roll call and to make sure that we do have a quorum. And so when I call your name, if you don't mind, answer here, and we will do that. Okay, so Philip Pierce, I'm present. Mike Olson.
Here.
Jim Durham.
Here.
John Rickard.
Here.
Brian Sargent.
Here.
Rob Roy Parnell. Ron Menard.
Here.
Kathy Ann Riley.
Here.
And Michael McDonald.
Here.
All right, so we do have a quorum. Okay, so the second item that we need to do is training for the board members, which is a little bit out of our normal. We usually look at the minutes from the last meeting, but we'll go in that direction. So, Mr. Johnson, if you don't mind, we'll have you come up and do that.
Good morning, committee members.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Charles Johnson, Assistant General Counsel. This part of the agenda is the fun part. This is where we comply with the requirement that the commission train each of the boards on 3 different topics. The 3 topics generally fall under the heading administrative law. I think y'all are all familiar with criminal law, civil law, but administrative law is a different animal. It's a combination of the first 2. And so this morning, we're going to take a few minutes to go over some of the top-level issues to give you some familiarity with the subject matter, which puts you in a position to recognize when you've got a problem, or at least put you in a position to know you need help to work through that problem. And so we start with I guess I need a mouse. There you go. As I said, administrative law is made up of 3 different areas, 3 different sets of statutes. The Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, and the Public Information Act. Those 3 topics make up administrative law.
And let me,
Yes, sir.
if you're following along, that starts on page 3 in our on screen.
And as I go along, if there are any questions, don't wait for the end. Just chime in and raise your questions, and we'll talk it out. Starting with open meetings, the Open Meetings Act. From my perspective, it's easier to understand a statute if you understand exactly what the legislature is trying to accomplish. And so that really applies to open meetings, because the purpose of open meetings is to provide for transparency so that the public is aware of what the agency is doing, the advice it's receiving, and the actions that it takes. And so if you go to the Government Code Chapter 551 in your spare time, you can read through the details. I'm going to stick to the high-level issues. So the first question you got to ask yourself is, what is a meeting? Because if it's not a meeting, this act does not apply. And so for there to be a meeting, you've got specific requirements that you've got to comply with. The first one is, in the interest of transparency, notice. You can't meet without notice to the public, because the public may find an issue on your agenda that they want to actually come here and participate in person, or they may want to log in over the internet and listen in. And so notice is a very important thing for purposes of open meetings. And a notice has to contain the date, the hour, the place, and the subject matter. The subject matter is extremely important because you'll see later on how that fits into the transparency issues. The requirements for posting, those are things that you don't have to worry about because the agency staff will take care and make sure that the time frames are met. And so when you get a request for a date or time to meet, it's important that you respond in a timely fashion so that the staff is in a position to make the postings and meet the requirements of the Act. So now you've got a meeting properly posted. Now the question becomes, can the committee act? And the question that guides that issue is there a quorum? And for purposes of this board, a 9-member board, 5 people make up a quorum. Without a quorum, there can be no meeting. Now, some of you have traveled great distances to be here, and the question becomes, you've traveled to be here, there's not a quorum, what happens? What happens is the board can, the members who are present can discuss the issues, but they can take no action because there's not a quorum, and that action is delayed until the next meeting where there is in fact a quorum. So, you've got a properly posted meeting, we've got a quorum present, and now the issue becomes, what can we talk about, okay? We can only discuss and take action on things and issues that are within the authority of this particular board. And for this particular board, it's architectural barriers, the elimination of those barriers. You can't talk about towing, you can't talk about electricians, you can only talk about the subject matter within your authority. You've got your quorum, we're here, the subject matter is within the authority of the board. The next question becomes, how do you interact? A lot of people think that it's just a verbal exchange, but it goes beyond a verbal exchange. If we sat here and said nothing and passed documents around that relate to the business of the board, you're having an open meeting, and those documents you pass around is subject to review. And that's going to come in again later on when we talk about open records. We've complied with all the requirements, but now you're outside this room. You're in a social setting, which some of you belong to the same associations, go to the same type of meetings. The question becomes, if 5 of you are or at a convention or at a seminar or at some outside function, is that a open meeting? That question is going to depend. It's going to depend upon whether you're engaged in conversations about the business of the board, okay? If you're just there in general, unknown to each other, you're going to be there, and there are 5 of you there, as long as you do not discuss the business of the board, you're fine. And this is going to be, I think, a important piece to keep and be aware of. So what do you need to know? You need to remember that inside of the meeting room, we know what the requirements are. Outside in a public setting, you need to be aware of your surroundings, aware of who's present as best you can at that meeting. You've looked around, you now see there's 5 members of you present. The next thing to remember is, if that occurs, do not engage in a discussion about the business of the board. That's just bottom line. Rule to follow is do not engage in a discussion about architectural barriers. That leads us into one of my favorite topics, walking quorums. A walking quorum is a device that was put in place to, remember I said if there's less than 5 members, there's no quorum. But what happens if there are 3 of you present? You engage in a discussion about the business of the board. That's not a quorum, so you're okay. But what happens when one of those three members walks up and sees a fourth member and relate to that person what you just discussed in a small group with three people? Now you've got four people involved. And now let's say that fourth person found it so compelling that they contact another person on the board and discuss and relay the information that was discussed in a smaller group. Now you have five. You just walked yourself into a quorum. And so nobody does that intentionally. Generally, it happens by accident. Okay? And I'm going to summarize the next few slides, but what those slides will show you is that this happens, excuse me, through conference calls. You've all participated at some point in a conference call where there's a lot of people just dial in, and you have no idea who's dialing into that conference call. It could be one member, it could be four, it could be five. You got a quorum. Emails. You've seen those long email lists where you reply all, and you've got 1,000, well, not thousands, but a lot of names there that you just kind of glance over and reply to all, not knowing that there were four other members in that list. You just walked yourself into a quorum. Text messages, same concept. Be aware of who's on that distribution list. So the takeaway from this is, when you meet in small groups, keep it to yourself. I mean, it's just that simple. Because as I said earlier, this stuff happens by accident. Nobody does it by design. So keep it to yourself. Until you appear in this room with a quorum, properly noticed, and all the other requirements have been met, you're free to engage in that discussion. So these rules are not put in place to stifle or to prohibit discussion. They're put in place to delay discussion. Delay discussion until you're in a properly noticed meeting and the public is aware of what's about to take place, because transparency is what we're trying to accomplish. So we're back into the hearing room. Properly noticed meeting, you call the agenda, and the next item on the agenda is public comment. You're all responsible and responsive people, and you want to help because you're here today helping us. And so when a person sits in front of you and they've got a long list of grievances and you are compelled to want to respond, do not do it. And the reason for that is because John Q. Citizen comes to this meeting with a host of issues that are not published, not noticed on the agenda. If you start asking questions and engaging in a discussion with that person, the rest of the state has been impeded from the ability to attend and participate in that discussion. So you hold those issues, those questions until the next meeting. And at the end of your meeting where you take public comment, you're gonna have an opportunity to identify issues for the next agenda. If a person sits in this seat and they say something compelling you want to talk about, put it on the next agenda. Notice it. And maybe, and then your discussion can free flow. You can take action, you can do whatever it is you think is appropriate within limits. But the idea being, delay those discussions until they've been noticed.
One question or one clarification on that.
Yes, sir.
Is that we are allowed to ask questions of clarification. Is that correct? Whenever somebody's making public comment, if there's something that we don't understand that they're trying to say, do we have that opportunity to ask for clarification?
I think there's a limited ability to do that, and I can't say until we actually hear the discussion and the question, but the purpose of sitting over there is to listen to your meetings, and if we think that you are going astray, to stop the discussion and bring you back to where we should be. And this goes against something I said earlier, is that the folk listening on this side of the room, and I'm pointing over to the Office of Strategic Communications and the General Counsel, if they hear something that they think is inappropriate, they're going to stop you. It's not personal. It's an attempt to comply with our perception, and this is all about perceptions at some point. The overriding concern is that you do not want to create the perception to the public that you engage in a discussion that have not been noticed. Because if you find yourself explaining something, you've lost the battle. Okay, you walked so close to that line that someone has perceived that you have committed a violation. So you want to stay as far off that line as you can, because that allows you to free flow and have a discussion that is meaningful, and your results that you pass on to the commission are useful. Okay, there's nothing more disheartening than to go through this process, commit a violation, send it to the commission, somebody complains about it, and we have to start all over again. So the purpose of this is there's an efficiency built into this as well. Let's see. So, best practices. Identify your agenda items. Always have a clear topic for discussion. Stay on topic. Here's a good one. The discussion is really interesting, and you're creative, and you're associating, and you're bringing in concepts, and you start to wonder, okay? Wondering off topic. Someone over there is going to say, time out, and try and stop you to bring you back to the point. And again, it's just to make sure that there's compliance with the requirements. What happens if you go astray and nobody catches you and the violation occurs? There's civil penalties associated with an open records violation. And I'm not going to give you the what could happen to you, because I think we're going to keep you so far off that line that nothing will ever happen to you, at least in this room. And when you're outside this room, you're not going to engage in those discussions. You're just going to bite your tongue and wait till you get back into this room for that full discussion. And you will never have an issue with civil remedies or criminal penalties, because there are also criminal penalties attached to this. I go back to something I said earlier. You do not want the Attorney General, you do not want a prosecutor determining your intent, okay? Because if you're having to explain, you've lost the battle. And so just be aware there are civil penalties, criminal penalties. I'm not going to tell you what they are, because they won't affect you, because you won't find yourself in that place. So best practices is, we know what the quorum is, involve a quorum, avoid a quorum, involve a quorum, avoid a quorum where you're discussing official business of this board. Confine your discussions to what's on the agenda, and remember, if anything occurs, you have help. You can contact me, you can contact the Attorney General's office, you can contact the General Counsel's office, someone, Office of Strategic Communications, someone will help and walk you through your issue. You don't have to do this by yourself, because we do this every day, and you don't. And so there are nuances that that we are aware of that they're not on the face of the statute, because we read the Attorney General opinions and so forth, and so there are a lot of interpretations that are not on the statute, and so you will not be aware of those unless you bring your issues to us, and we will walk you through. So there are a host of resources that you can go to, but I just close. Sorry. I just do. Well, there we go. Done with open meetings. The second piece of the equation is the Administrative Procedures Act. You'll hear people referring to the APA. The APA is the Administrative Procedures Act. There are two pieces of this act that you should be aware of, and I think that you engage in each of your meetings when a meeting is called. There's the rulemaking component of the Administrative Procedures Act, and then there is the SOA, the State Office of Administrative Hearings piece, the rules that are used when the cases are sent for a hearing and come back to the commission. I'll give you a brief overview, but that piece is just informational. The important piece for you is rulemaking. Rulemaking is what a lot of your action is geared towards, and so the question becomes, here is again, is that minimum standards of procedure, and again, these procedures are put in place for transparency. That's the same as the Open Meetings Act APA is transparency. And so what's a rule? A rule is just a simple statement of the agency or the commission's position on a given topic. If the commission issues an opinion, it's generally considered a rule, and there's a whole process we go through, which we'll get to in a minute, as far as rulemaking. Rules include all the amendments, and they go beyond just the internal operations of the agency. I think there are two chapters that you may not be aware of, but you see on your website, Chapter 55 and Chapter 60. Those are administrative internal procedures that apply to all programs, including this program, but you necessarily don't have to delve into those types of issues. We do. So, rulemaking. Rulemakings are intended to advise interested persons, and there's a definition of interested persons. Interested persons, those who your recommendations affect, those people who the rule impacts. So how do we get to the rulemaking process? There's several paths. The idea comes from who knows where. We just went through strategic planning. Sometimes they come there. They come from internal discussions within the agency, discussions of the board. The commission may have a great idea for a rule. And so they come from various places, and once the decision is made to engage in a rulemaking, there are several steps that take place. I want you to know that of each of these steps, this board has the greatest input and impact on a rulemaking that involves your subject matter, because as you'll see, you see the rule twice. Commission sees it once, okay? Unless there's issues with it and they send it back. But ordinarily, the commission sees it once, you deal with it twice. You deal with it when the idea is put into a draft form, it's brought to you as a proposed rule. You see it for the very first time before the world sees it, you see it. You get a chance to make edits to it, you get a chance to put your stamp on it, okay? Once that's done, under APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, we publish it with the Secretary of State's office in the Texas Register, and it sits there for 30 days to allow folk to comment on it and to provide those comments to us. Once those comments come through, we bring those comments to you. So you see it now for the second time. You get to respond to those comments. You get to agree or disagree with what the public is saying about your proposed rule. It then goes to the commission. This is the first time the commission has seen it. If you've done a thorough job, which generally you do, the commission will adopt the rule. It goes back to the Texas Register, it's published with an effective date, and when that effective date arrives, the rule is active, and your work on that particular rulemaking is complete. There's a second piece of rulemaking that it's not as detailed as this. We are required by statute every 4 years to review all of our rules and to reaffirm those rules are necessary. We do it here in a two-phase process. The first process is we generally publish the rule review notice, but we don't make any changes. We wait for the public to respond to that, and then in response to those comments, we may engage in the second phase, which is to bring you a rule to address the issues that were raised in the public comment portion of the rule review process. And then once that's done, we start over again on the slide before with the publication, the comments, commission, and that cycle is complete. There are some resources you can engage in. Again, the Attorney General has an administrative law handbook that walks you through all what I've just discussed with you in more detail to give you, I guess, a more grounded background in these topics. That takes us to the third and final piece of administrative law, which is the Public Information Act. The Public Information Act, I'm going to give you less of a summary than the first two topics, because at this point we want you just to be aware that public information is any document that's used and reviewed by the Commission to engage in its deliberations. And so you can see here that transparency, again, is the undertone, the undercurrent of what the legislature is trying to accomplish. Transparency in that the public is entitled to any document that is not privileged And only the Attorney General can determine whether a document is privileged. If we believe something should be withheld, we cannot withhold it. We have to send it to the Attorney General's office, and they decide whether or not it's appropriate to withhold. And so this meeting is being broadcast. People are actually watching and seeing what's going on in this room. If we start exchanging documents back and forth, I can make a request to see those documents. And so just be aware that beyond this room, there are other people listening. Somebody in the room could also make that request. And so we'd have to collect those documents. If there's something that's privileged, send it to the Attorney General's office, and we go through that process. The other piece to remember is that because you are servants, people will expect you to serve their needs, to ask you for documents, because you're part of this committee. Resist the temptation. Okay? Point them to the Commission's website, because at the bottom of that page, there's an open records request form that they fill out. We are held to a requirement to respond within a reasonable period of time, and a reasonable period of time is determined to be like roughly 10 days. And so each day that's delayed is a day that we don't have an opportunity to respond. And if we hit that 10th day and do not respond, but there yet privileged information in in those records, we have to release them, unless it's mandatory provision that the Attorney General can invoke. But it's important to communicate those requests to us, but better practice is send them to the website. Okay? And so, as I said, some things are confidential: dates of birth, email addresses, educational records, medical records, those things. And we do have those records in our possession. And so it's important that you pass the information on to us. And again, here's a host of resources you can go to. But I would recommend you ask your questions to us, and we'll walk you through that process. That concludes the training for the mandatory training. And again, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those questions. And if outside this meeting, you've got my email address, you've got the agency email address, and we will respond appropriately. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody have any questions? All right. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you very much. And I will officially welcome Mr. Parnell to our group here. So not only do we have a quorum, we're completely full today. So that's a very good thing.
You may not want my email pop up on the screen, so I'm going to close it.
All right. So the next item for business then that we have is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. And I think you've all got a copy of the minutes there in front of you. And if you'll note that there are a couple of places that have got, that are highlighted in yellow, and that's because initially there were there was a person that was included as being present and being missing or not present at the last meeting or absent at the last meeting, and that's been corrected. And then the other thing is that there was an addition that when we asked for public comments, or if there were any public comments, there were none. So are there any questions about those two corrections to what had previously come out? Everybody good with that? All right, so if that's the case, then I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion's been made, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, so that brings us then to the next item on the agenda, and that would be public comment. And we do have a request to make public comment by Fran Robertson. And so I'll call you to the desk and to the mic. And again, let me just preface this, and it kind of ties back to what Mr. Johnson was talking about earlier, and just remind everybody, and I do this every time, so it's not specific to any set of circumstances, but our job is to listen, and so that's what we will do. And so please don't take any offense to that. We're just hearing what you've got to say.
Understood.
Okay.
My name is Fran Robertson. I'm with the Office of the Governor, the Committee on People with Disabilities,
and my director asked me to go ahead and address you this morning. So I thank you for the opportunity to address you. With the Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities, we partner with Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Your agency is one of our ex officio partners, and we have 10 particular issue areas that we deal with on a regular basis. One of them is access, both programmatic and physical access issues. We maintain a hotline for the public, and we get comments from the public by phone call, email, what have you, on a regular basis, sometimes daily, on access issues. One of the things is there is a misunderstanding on the part of the public regarding enforcement issues. We have comments from municipalities, whether it be police departments, whether it's from the general public, on existing facilities. We have emails forwarded to us from TDLR's TECHINFO, where when there is an existing facility, whether it's a parking lot or a public accommodation in the Title II or Title III environment, where there is no construction that is actually going on. The facility has been there for a while, and there is an ADA violation of some sort. They will get information back from TDLR saying, this is not new construction, we have no enforcement activity, and they will refer them to the Department of Justice. The person, entity will contact Department of Justice, and they will say, this is a state issue. We have no jurisdiction, and they are put in a loop. There are very few entities that have local ordinances that will address ADA violations. For instance, the City of Austin has one of the most complete ordinances that will address ADA violations, whether it comes to accessible parking issues or any of the public accommodation issues and all, but this is one of the exceptions when it comes to that. Because we have so many people that approach us thinking that the governor's office can resolve their problems, and they misunderstand that TDLR has enforcement responsibilities for any and all violations, whether or not it has a construction issue attached to the problem. They have expectations that there is some entity within the state that can enforce these violations. And so we are making you aware of the issue that exists within our state. We understand that within the department, at one time, there were upwards of 18 individuals that may have looked at enforcement, even in the when there was ongoing construction, and now the department is down to 4 people within architectural barriers that may be looking at some of these issues, and only the most severe circumstances may be addressed when it comes to violations, that when there are penalties associated, collections are extremely low, and they are not prioritizing enforcement of violations. And so what the public is asking us in the governor's office, who can we turn to? And so we wanted to make you aware of this issue. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the next agenda item that we have are the staff reports, and starting with the licensing division. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Pearson and board members. My name is Chloe Whelan, licensing manager. Your licensing statistics are before you. I just have a couple of reminders, probably for some of our...
Why don't you pull that mic up there? We're having a hard time.
Sorry,
the mowers,
and I'm dealing with allergies, so
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Well, and the mowers are
Oh, yeah.
giving us some supplemental noise here.
So for some of our new registered accessibility specialists, we wanted to remind you or those individuals out in the community that once you complete your continuing education, those providers have up to 7 days to get those hours posted to us. So just be patient and allow them to get the hours into the system, and then your license will be able to print. Those that are completing self-study hours, you can send your certificates in to us, and we will get those hours posted to your file, and then your renewal license will be able to issue. That's all the updates I have for you. If you have any questions.
Questions? All right, great. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Okay, next, the Customer Service Division.
Good morning, board members.
Morning.
Misty Maldonado de Leon. I am the manager for the Customer Service Division for Architectural Barriers Program. My report is very short. As you can see, the numbers are pretty standard. These are the numbers that reflect the calls that come into the 800 line, which is the main number. TECHINFO also has their number posted on the site, so this is only reflecting the main number and the emails we get through the main lines there. And if you don't have any questions, that's all I have today.
Well, I'm a little bit curious, it's overwhelming that you get more calls than you do emails. That's an interesting thing. Do you have any idea why that is? And would you guys prefer to get emails over telephone calls?
We do prefer more emails because it gives us time to do the research and be more intricate with our answers. But phone calls as well. That we usually will turn the more detailed technical phone calls into emails and send them to TECHINFO so they can answer them more accurately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if we can get
But
the word.
emails are good,
Yeah,
yes.
if we can get the word out
Yeah.
that maybe somebody, they may think that a telephone call is going to get more immediate action, but I'm guessing that as far as completeness of responses, probably emails are a better deal.
That is correct. And we've recently added on our recording, when you call and you're holding, we've recently added the help at email address, so they can just, if they don't want to hold any longer, they can do that,
Yeah,
and that's an email.
outstanding. Very good, thank you.
I'll make a comment from the architectural community. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you,
You're very
appreciate that.
responsive.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other questions?
All right, thank you for your report.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Okay, the Enforcement Division.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm Dawn Burton, prosecutor in the Enforcement Division, providing today's staff report. Since you last met, there's been one order issued. In the case of 13219 Highway 183, the respondent failed to schedule an inspection within 1 year of construction completion and settled that case. An agreed order was issued for $750, which was paid in full. In the statistics section, we have two tables today. The first table contains the current fiscal year's statistics that you all have seen in the past. The second table is provided in response to the question about trends in cases in recent years. The question was whether penalties or the number of cases has decreased in recent years, and whether most respondents were located outside of Texas. After looking at the numbers, overall, the numbers don't show a specific trend regarding the number of cases or the locations of respondents. But what the numbers do show is that we had a dip in cases in 2016, fiscal year 2016, and in fiscal year 2018, and I wanted to give you some information about that. In both of those years, we had staff changes that affected the processing of cases in this program. And especially regarding fiscal year 2018, we were affected by multiple shifts in staff, hiring freeze that lasted 7 months, that began in 2017 and then followed over into fiscal year 2018, and responses to Hurricane Harvey. So we had problems filling those positions, but I wanted to let you all know that those positions are now filled as of this month. We got the last one in this month. And so we do expect our numbers of cases to go back up to what we ordinarily see. Did you have any questions about the statistics or the case highlights or anything else.
Seeing none. Thank you for your report. Okay, Education Examination Division.
Good morning, members. I'm Kim Well with the Education Examination Division.
Good morning.
Good morning. Today, before you are your exam statistics for the RAS exams, as well as your continuing education statistics for the number of courses that have been approved. And that's all I have. If you have some questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Anybody have questions? You had a chance to look at that. It's on page 14 of your follow along, if you're not there. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. All right, Regulatory Program Management Division.
Hello, my name is Charlotte Melder. I am here with Marcia to present the Regulatory Program Management Report. I wanted to explain a little bit about the calibration that happened in RPM. We did mention it a little bit at the last meeting, but I think most of you are familiar with Bob Posey as the manager over the AB section. We got rid of that position completely, so there will be no new Bob. What we've done is we've taken several programs and put them under one manager, which is me for the architectural barriers. I also have several other programs such as towing and water well, et cetera, that I'm the manager over. So what we did was we created another lead position. As you know, Norman was in the lead position before. We created a program specialist 6, which we have promoted Marcia, congratulations, to that. So she and Norman will be leads over the program. She is the lead. And he will be taking on, keeping some of his lead responsibilities to work that program. Unfortunately, like mentioned before, there are only 4 people. We do expect a 5th. We have the posting out right now. If anybody knows of anybody interested, it closes on Friday. And Marcia and I will be doing the review of those applications and hiring that person to replace Chrissy Cooper, who was one of the people teaching at the academy who has been working with us. She has not left. She has just left AB. She is going to one of our other sections within RPM as a multi-program specialist. So we will still have her education and knowledge available to us. I also wanted to point out that there has been quite a bit of outreach, mostly by Norman, going around. I was fortunate enough to be able to sit in on the Rock Out the Task that was done. That was very entertaining and educational. But as you can see in your report, there's quite a bit of traveling around the state, and that doesn't look to be slowing down at any time soon, even with the staffing issues that we're having. I am hoping that changes soon as far as that goes. But Marcia's going to report the statistics.
Marcia Godo.
Yeah, I know. How much grass can they possibly have out there?
At least we got rain in their mowing, okay? The hay crop's not doing too good this year.
Okay, so it looks like on average we've got about 5,000 plan reviews per quarter and about 4,000 inspections per quarter coming in for the fiscal year of 2018. The TDLR inspections are staying fairly consistent. We're winding down from the previous inspections that TDLR was paid for. We're just waiting on completion dates for most of those, but I believe those are around 22 left. So it'll just keep decreasing as we go. Variances and appeals are staying consistent with an average about 57 a month. So that is some work that we do about reviewing those applicants and issuing responses. Any questions on the statistics? Yes, sir.
How many of these variances or appeals are approved?
Approved exactly, I would say probably 1 or 2, but there is a postponement result that means that we are not approving the actual request, but we are postponing compliance at this time.
Okay.
So that's sort of an appeal. There are more of those. the postponements.
Okay. Anyone else?
Most of those are training facilities that they don't quite meet the requirements, but they are intended for training, so it meets it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and the executive office report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, board members, Nick Voinas, TDLR Chief of Staff. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for your service to the program, to the state. Here to bring you a little summary of what's been happening around the agency this summer. First off, we completed our strategic plan. It's something that the legislature mandates every state agency do every 2 years, and it's something that we take very seriously. We hosted external sessions around the state. We had meetings in Arlington, El Paso, Houston, McAllen, and here in Austin. And the sessions were an opportunity for everyone to come and share ideas and opinions on how we're doing and how we can improve. For those who were unable to make any of the sessions, we made it available where they could participate on our Facebook page and on our web page as well. We also conducted internal sessions with our staffs throughout the agency, and the final report was completed and submitted to the Office of the Governor and the Legislative Budget Board. It's available for viewing on TDLR.texas.gov. Following that, staff went to work on our legislative appropriations request, and staff identified exceptional items, rider requests, and they provided information on revenue estimates and expenses. That report was also completed and submitted to the Governor's Office and the LBB. Over the last couple of weeks, our Executive Director and staff have participated in hearings, last week with the LBB and the Governor's Budget Office, and today with the Senate Business and Commerce Committee, and all this in preparation of the next legislative session in January. Would also like to talk to you a little bit about our outreach, including your program and your website, and a little update on traffic numbers associated with the program. Over the past 6 months, your website had 105,449 page views, and that's an average of 579 per day. 84% of those visitors accessed your site from a desktop computer, while 11% did so from a smartphone and 5% from a tablet. The top reasons for visiting your site, number one, by far, the Texas Accessibility Standards, followed by administrative rules, Texas Accessibility Academy, registered accessibility procedures, and technical memoranda. In addition, in addition to talking about our website, I also want to remind you of our social media presence on Twitter and Facebook, so please check those avenues out if you're interested in keeping up with TDLR news and events. We also have a group of about 5,000 subscribers to your listserv who receive various email blasts pertaining to your program. And if someone's not receiving those notices and would like to, they can subscribe by going to TDLR.texas.gov. Answer any questions you may have.
All right. Any
I have
questions?
one question, Nick.
Yes, sir.
So we talk about the magnitude of the site visits. How does that relate to your other programs? What's your most popular accessible program via the web?
Probably the largest one, cosmetology, but yours is up there. It really is. That's pretty good traffic.
Just curious about the program.
Right.
How this program ranks with the interest of the public and utilization.
Be in the top half.
Any others? All right, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is discussion regarding technical memoranda process and possible changes for improvement.
Hello again, Charlotte Melder. The agenda item is worded technical memoranda and possible changes. The reason that it's worded that way is because one of the other benefits of the calibration was to allow fresh sets of eyes to look at all of the processes and procedures. At the last meeting, it came to our attention that there was a proposal to rescind a tech memo, and After looking at the statute and rules, it looks like the rules require that any action for a tech memo to go through our commission currently. Based on that, we underwent some internal meetings, and we are going to be looking at the process. Currently, the tech memos do not go through the commission, so we need to decide internally, with our executive approval, of course, whether or not we are going to change our procedures to match the rule or change the rule to match our procedures. And unfortunately, we're not at a position right now to make an ultimate decision on that. For every tech memo that's out there, we plan on going forward with it, and anything as far as if there are disagreements or discrepancies, the variance process is available, and those variances are being approved if it fits with what we're talking about. Do you have any questions?
Always careful about what I'm going to say.
I am as well.
So if an individual who's been in limbo about Tech Memorandum 24,
Mhm. It's 24.
14, 24, they would apply for a variance, which you're saying right now would be approved
I'm saying.
based on the circumstances?
I'm saying based on the circumstances, yes. We've had some for Tech Memo 24, and based on the circumstances, those have been approved.
Right.
But we can't say blanket, of course.
Of course, of course.
So if they have that situation that Tech Memo 24 addresses, please file a variance.
So are your comments today restricted to 24, or does it include all other, I think about 25 technical memorandum?
We intend to enforce all of our technical memorandum until they are reviewed, and that process may be all of them are reviewed. But if there is a situation where we feel as if the technical memorandum needs to be deviated from, the variance process is the way to do that.
Is it okay for me to ask if the staff agrees that technical memorandum 24 is appropriate?
I can tell you that our intent was to rescind it. We just can't do that at this time. I
Currently,
cannot
yeah.
tell you
I
whether
understand
one
that.
way or the other.
Mhm. Am I good?
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, no, I understand all that, yes. I'm good, and I understand how it all works. And that's been part of the frustration. Because, not the sharpest tool in the shed. But no, and I think the communication has been fantastic. And I know that you guys have been working hard to get this worked out. And so I hope that you realize that any frustration on this side of the microphone, if you will, comes from the confusion. And you're working to straighten that out, and I appreciate that very much. And so, thank you. You guys have always been very responsive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, and I think that level of comfort across other people throughout the state that have issues or concerns about these things, I think that's going to improve that a lot too. So we really do appreciate the look that you guys are taking at this and the efforts to take action to correct places where maybe there was a little bit of confusion about these things. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much.
Actually, the next agenda item as well.
Okay, good. So item H is discussion and demonstration of the tabs.
We put that on there in case we wanted to do another demonstration, which we do not. You guys have seen it, but we have some great news, in my opinion. We have been given dates, so I'm very excited. Currently, the way what we're understanding is that our IT folks will be done building everything by September 15th, which is soon, a couple of weeks. And then we will have 1 month of internal and external testing, and to find any bugs or any errors, et cetera. What I'm asking for people is that to understand when you do see the tab system, it may not be what you want, We just need it to work. So if it's not the colors you want, if it's not an accessibility issue and it works, please let it go. But we are working to have that done. Once that time is over, we're also, the staff, T specifically, is working on scripts. We're working on creating videos of teaching people how to use the system. We'll have all that up and running hopefully a week or two before it goes live, and our go live date is currently October 15th. So we're really excited.
That is very good news, by the way. Thank you.
No problem. And actually, that is the end of what we planned on presenting for tabs. Did you have any questions for that before we move on to the next one?
Everybody good with that? Those dates, yeah, we're not going to absolutely hold you in concrete to that, but
Right.
hey, having actual dates out there is a pretty exciting thing, so, good.
Yes,
Thank you.
everybody's been working very hard
I know.
around the clock.
I know.
Okay, so if you don't mind.
Yeah, item I is discussion and possible action on the RAS procedures.
Yes, so the RAS procedures, as you know, have typically gone through the work group, been approved by the advisory board. Now, we are going to have them, same process, except for we are actually going to have them hopefully presented to our commission. So at the end of our presentation today, we are going to ask for you to vote and hopefully approve the procedures so that they can go to our commission, which is set to meet September 14th, so that they will be in place by go live date of October 15th. So the procedures before didn't have tabs in mind, and so we needed to draft, we as in the people in AV who did all of this hard work, draft procedures with tabs in mind of what can happen and what can't happen. There are some slight differences and new things that tabs allows that didn't before that Marcia's going to go over.
Okay, Marcia Godo. One of the new things in the RAS procedures we'll start with are the email notifications. So as we mentioned in the last meeting, when you log in under tabs, you will log in using your email address. This email, yes, sir.
Let me just, we're at page 19, if I understand correctly, with where it says the
RAS procedure.
procedures for registered accessibility specialists.
Yes.
Okay, everybody there?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. And I'm not going to go through each and every item. We're just going to go through the new stuff. So as I was saying, email notifications. It is in the new procedures that you keep your email address up to date, because in tabs, that's how you're going to get most of your notifications and reminders. Hey, a project's been registered to you as a RAS. You have a transfer request pending, things like that.
Okay.
So it is in the procedures that you keep that up to date. The next thing that's a pretty big one is we have put in what is called file sharing, which is different than transferring a file. So in the past, you were required to send in a request and someone physically sent the file. There is no physical file with the new tab system, so you send a request and it's just a click of a button to allow access for the new RAS to have access. That's a transfer. A share will be if, as a RAS, you are requesting help, per se, for plan reviews and inspections. So you are asking another RAS to share a project with another RAS. As the requesting RAS, you will have rights to view the project and limited editing capability for contact changes, ECD, estimated completion date changes, things like that. As the reviewing or inspecting RAS, you will have all rights. So you will be able to make those contact changes and you'll be able to enter your plan reviews or inspection reports. Because we license individuals, you are still responsible for that virtual file. Okay?
And what was the idea behind that?
The sharing of a file. We had several comments come in when we originally proposed the RAS procedures about file sharing. I believe we called it primary and secondary at that time. So we changed it a little bit of the wording to match how we license individuals.
So is that for like, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So is that for like RASs within the same office or something like that?
That is
Okay,
one
all right.
situation where that
Okay.
happens. Yes, sir. Oh, she got it? Okay.
Marcia, I have a question.
Yes.
So when we were talking about last time in the presentation, we were talking about the size of the drawings, and we had a limitation, I believe, of 5 meg, which, have
We have been
talk
working
about
on
that?
increasing
Am I a
that.
little early, or can we at least cover that at some point in time?
I could talk about that. We're currently working on increasing that up.
We're optimistic.
I like optimism. No matter how long I've been doing this, I still stay optimistic. Stupid or optimistic, I'm not sure which, but yes. Okay, thank you, that's
Okay.
good to hear.
Who does?
I'm
Yes.
worried, I am so gun shy now. But, you know, it occurred to me that mechanical, electrical, plumbing, probably structural, when we submit a set of construction documents, we submit the whole set. And they're not, a lot of it's paper that is never looked at. Half those drawings could be reduced if we only submitted those things apropos to the review, which would be civil architecture and landscape architecture, something like that. Is that possible for us to consider?
When you submit plans, as an auditor, we should be able to see exactly what you saw. So if there were no violations, it's not required to be submitted as a construction document. However, in an audit, if we question it, you should be able to justify why it wasn't in there.
Well, I'm just trying to get the process.
But yes, you
We're going to be
can.
storing a heck of a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with our purview.
Yes, you will be able to pull out.
Okay.
But that's on you. Whatever you upload is what we have to
I got
review.
you, okay.
But I think that goes back to the question we had last time, which is the technological ability to take a PDF file and to pull those things that are cited as an unacceptable or a verified comment in a review, or the things that you would want to see, not necessarily the FlexDuck layout. So I am unsure, and I don't know if any of the advisory groups are experts in Adobe Acrobat, but if it seems to me like you said it's on the RAS to determine what goes in that file. Do we know how? I don't know how to do that.
Okay, I can tell you
So-
that what she's saying is we would prefer everything. We want to be able to look at everything.
Even though they're 100 meg?
I understand. We don't want everything. I was just talking to our program manager, Teresa, who's fantastic, and she said that they know for sure we'll be able to do 25, so we know that it's going higher than 5. We're hoping to get more, but we know at least we've got that minimum. There are several options. There are programs that can be used. I don't know if you have hard copy and then you scan them in, or if they start scanned in. There are ways of doing it.
Yeah, it's almost, so with Adobe Professional, you can't take out pages and make a separate document. So it's almost as if you will have to have an upload document with civil, architectural, and if there are problems in plumbing that you want to put up there, like if they have the ADA plumbing in the wrong stall or whatever. And you can make a separate document and upload that. It should be I
Well,
think it's fairly easy, but.
Based on this conversation, and because I don't want it to be a burden on the TDLR capacity in the system to maintain such a large volume as still, and I think it's also, impractical that y'all would have to store all that if we could have some helpful insights, much like you're going to have training. So, the question of, so what if you don't want to upload all what can you do? What are your options so that you can teach the RAS and the public about what is available? It's up to them, obviously, but I think if I think it would be helpful to facilitate the process and provide whatever, what Kathy Ann is saying, and I'll look into that. But I think it would be helpful as part of our overall setting forth the initiative here and how we do this upload and how we can reduce capacity against the system would be helpful.
Absolutely. And to clarify, any documents that don't have anything to do with us, we would rather not get those. And when we do the training, she's made a note, we will include that. Keep in mind, though, we're not going to be able to suggest any particular program like was suggested before. We'll just be able to say, no, that's fine. We as an agency are going to say there are there are programs out there that do this.
All right.
Understood.
Yeah. Training is a good way to go about that, though, so that's good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, another item that was updated in the procedures based off of comments that we had received in the past is we have increased on almost all our date deadlines up to from 14 to 30 days. The only one that doesn't do that is transfers because of open records requirements, but you have 30 days to turn in your plan review, 30 days to do your inspection, so it's been increased because we heard what y'all were asking for. And the last big one that's new is for review and inspection results that result in no findings or no violations. We're only requiring a transmittal letter, which has reduced the number of attachments in the RAS procedures.
Oh, okay.
So as long as there's no findings or no violations, you only have to submit the transmittal letter.
I don't know if our owners would like that, but
Well, the thought was is that if you've got a report with no violations, there's nothing on the extra piece of paper to
they
say.
just like
no
it. Some of
violations.
them like it. That's fine with me.
Any questions on the RAS procedures?
Okay, now,
Oh.
we do want to do something here because we have, again, as Charlotte had pointed out, we have the opportunity for this now to go to the commission. But in order to do that, we need to have a motion, second, and vote to refer it to the commission. And so I ask for that, if I can get that motion.
So moved.
Okay. The motion has been made and seconded to refer the RAS procedures as they've been presented here today to the commission for their consideration. And by the way, that meeting is, I understand it's September 14th, so it's right here. So this is good timing as far as we're concerned. So the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and so that brings us now to discussion of the date, time, and location of our next meeting. As far as I know, we don't really have any pressing things that we're working with here right now, do we? Does anybody know of anything that we really need to meet sooner rather than later, like we did for this meeting?
When will we be able to kind of see how it's all working? Like
October?
late in, like,
November,
well, give it a month or two probably, right?
December, maybe
December?
even January.
When's a good check back for how everything's, I don't know, maybe 2 months might not be enough.
For
I say
tabs,
January.
you're talking about?
Yeah, for
yeah.
tabs.
Excuse me.
I'm getting nods. Mary Winston, TDLR. Marcia, do you want, so we're going live, estimated October
October 15th.
15th. And testing time,
So with a go-live date of October 15th, to work out any additional bugs, I would say to see how it's really going is December, maybe January.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
I'm thinking January, even February.
Because you're gonna fix some stuff on the run, and then we won't have to see all the problems that you fixed. We
It will
just
work
need to know
perfectly
how
right
it
off the
works.
bat.
I love your optimism.
Yes, we will. We will
Hey,
be
if
getting
everything went
fielding
perfectly, they
calls.
wouldn't need people like us, okay?
Okay, and
We will
the-
field
and-
calls and work out some kinks.
And the other part of that, too, that relates to the other thing that we talked about on the tech memorandum process and all of that sort of thing, how confident are you that, we'll have kind of made some progress on that by the time we get to January or February?
Actually, Mary Winston again, and I keep saying my name because we're all supposed to.
Oh,
But we
that's
had
true.
such a good conversation going, I just didn't stop the flow. January, we honestly met internally right after that meeting. And as I've expressed, we've all in staff have expressed into some of the members that this is part of the reason that you guys are here. To advise us, hey, if something's not quite right, we try to jump on it and get it straight. So, Mr. Sergeant, you don't need to be gun shy because we do appreciate that. It gave us a deep dive into some things that need to be looked at. So, I think by January, I'm getting nods that, or February, that we should have some action on that. So January is probably a good time. I think are we already scheduling meetings out in January? Yes. So let's see what the availability is.
Break out calendars. Yeah, I'm good too.
Yeah.
Anybody have a conflict on any of those, 22nd or 29th?
I'm good for both.
Okay,
How about you?
okay, so flip a coin.
22nd.
22nd sounds like a good one for you, okay. Can we do the 22nd? Let's put it on there then.
Okay.
So,
Same time?
yes, same time, same
Did we
location.
decide on the 22nd?
22nd, yes. 1/22 of 19.
Right.
Okay,
It's my first
and so
19.
we know that a couple of things we'll have is is an update on how the tab system's going, and then the process considering on the tech memorandum, and then other things as they come up.
Well, I think we should address the enforcement mechanism and explain that to, if Fran wants to come back, we can outline it's not as straightforward, I think, as most people think. There's a variety of ways it's enforced, and I think we should just probably outline that process, and that maybe it will help you inform your constituency
Yeah,
on how it works.
I would probably differ from that a little bit. What I might suggest is that the enforcement division get together with them at the governor's office and let them kind of see that, and then next time we'll have
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
if I may,
Yes, sir.
I think we have strayed off into a substantive discussion of an issue not on the agenda.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to say, now that we all know Charles Johnson, he is not going to let us stray. So that is true. But I do want to add, sidebar, we're already on it. I already have instant messages going back and forth.
Good.
And I will grab you before you leave out today.
Good. And again, we will have a report from the enforcement division, so we'll be able to cover that, I think, so.
So we're asking for an agenda item.
Yes.
To be
Yes.
on the meeting of January 22nd relative
cover that.
to
Enforcement,
enforcement.
which it would be anyway, so, okay. Anything else? All right, I think we've got everything covered then, and then I ask for a motion to adjourn. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All approved, say aye.
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 I think it passed. Who did the motion?
You made it.
Okay.
Motion.
All right, well, we are adjourned then. Thank you.
Doing good. I think you drove it all.
That one in the corner is good.